He's, in the last year or so, he's clearly come out for a swift end to the war. He voted against the latest big 95 billion aid package that was for Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel.
I just want to start with the House of Representatives situation. Republicans given control of the House of Representatives. The top line in the piece was Trump therefore handed sweeping powers to enact his legislative agenda. How much of what will end up affecting global security do you think is set in his mind, and how significant, given that, is getting control of the House of Representatives for him?
Yeah, well, it's huge for a president to have the trifecta, or for a party to have the trifecta, the presidency, the House, and the Senate. It's what Trump had in 2016 when he came in, but everybody from Trump downwards believes that they blew it then. They didn't make the most of having the control that was lost in the midterms when the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi took over the House in the midterms, and then started to put a brake on Trump, because the House controls the purse strings. You've got to get any spending bills through the House, and they were able to block funds for building the wall, for example, with Mexico, which made it really difficult for Trump to get the funds to do it, because he hadn't sorted it out in the first couple of years. But as far as international security that you mention, well, the big one is going to be tariffs. Now, Trump could try and use presidential powers to bring in some tariffs, but for them to be really effective and part of an overall program, he's going to have to get a bill through the House, and that will be part of the first big legislation that's announced, I've got no doubt, on January the 20th, on Inauguration Day. As soon as he's got his feet under the Resolute desk, we'll be hearing about tax cuts for Americans and tariffs for everybody else around the world. And it's part of the America's security policy, because it's regarded, certainly with China, where Trump's talked of tariffs of up to 60% on all Chinese goods coming in. It's partly punishment for China for what he sees as stealing America's secrets. That's industrial secrets as much as military or whatever, but also to send a message that America is going to be very protectionist under Trump, and trying to grow its own and reshore its own manufacturing, which is going to have massive ramifications, not just for China, but it's going to have a knock-on effect all around the world. He's talked of a general universal tariff of 10%. Well, obviously, allies of America, including Britain, are doing their best to find out if he really means that, and then to negotiate a deal, because Trump is always open for a deal. That's what it's all about. The Art of the Deal is his book, his famous book from several decades ago now, that when he first began to make his name, and he lives by it. He's always open to discuss a deal.
And of course, it's one thing having that control, but you've got to have the people around you that back what you do. So let's start talking a bit about the cabinet, and specifically with those involved in sort of security, both of the US, but more on the international scene as well. Maybe, I don't know whether you agree with this, there's a suggestion that the team he's put together are perhaps a bit more hawkish than expected, kind of less America first potentially. Do you agree with that? What do you think is the thinking behind some of the positions that we know who he wants to fill those positions with?
For the face of the administration to the world, Trump has nominated Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. He's a Florida senator, and in many ways a conventional pick for a Republican president, because he's well established in the Senate. He's a vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and has long-standing interest in foreign affairs, and well known around the world. So much so that his very hawkish position on China, has got him a ban from China. He's under sanctions from Beijing. He's actually banned from traveling to China, and that would be a first for an American Secretary of State. So he's he is, as you suggest, both hawkish, extremely on China and Iran, seen as the two big geopolitical foes of America. But he's also not quite as America first as Trump. He has talked of the importance of America's allies and of NATO. So that will certainly give NATO allies a little bit of reassurance that Trump isn't going to come along with a wrecking ball, as he almost did in the first term. He actually threatened to pull America out of the alliance if nations didn't step up and start paying a lot more for themselves. Well, Trump's still going to do that. He's going to challenge nations to spend more. We've been hearing that not just demands to meet the 2% of GDP on defense that is NATO's current target. Trump wants to raise that to 3%, which is more in line with where America is. It's not quite at 3%, it's around 3%. And only one or two countries meet that at the moment. Britain certainly doesn't. So there's going to be pressure on NATO, but if Rubio is confirmed, as most people expect he will be, because he's a well-known figure, there will still be pressure to pay more on defence.
Do you think that someone like Rubio will have an impact on Donald Trump's sort of current thinking? And I guess that the rest of the team as well. He's talked, hasn't he, about these picks being about loyalty, and it certainly seems he's gone for that rather than expertise in some of the appointments he's made. Do you think his current foreign policy plans are now, okay, this is the team that's going to deliver them, or may they have an impact when they get into position and are able to talk him into something slightly different from what we anticipate he is thinking right now?
No, I think Trump is going to be calling the shots in very much in his second term. He's done with taking lots of advice and lectures almost from his own cabinet members, most of whom in those senior security positions anyway, he fell out with during his first term. And he's been nominating real loyalists who will follow very much his agenda, who will know exactly what his mind is as far as it's made up. Now, Trump is a mercurial figure who changes his mind on a whim sometimes, and so they're going to have to be pretty nimble to stay loyal and go along with that, and then explain it, the twists and turns that do happen under Trump to the American public and the wider world. But one thing is for certain, that the people he is nominating now are absolutely 100% committed to following Trump's wishes, and not to coming with some other agenda to change his mind. And that's what we've seen so far. I think certainly with a nomination like Pete Hegseth, who is the Fox News presenter, an army veteran who's been nominated as defense secretary. He's a long-standing confidant and advisor to Trump on military matters, actually. Trump would regularly phone him up just to talk about military affairs. Even during his first term, Hegseth was consulted on military matters privately. And so Trump knows him pretty well, and of course likes his performance on Fox News at the weekends on his show, and is well known for, certainly domestically, he wants to, as he sees it, take the woke out of the military. He's talked of ending having female soldiers fighting on the front line, for example. That's something he's talked about recently. But moreover, again, it's Trump's philosophy of peace through strength, which is building up the American military so that it's got such a commanding. It's building up the American military so it's got such a commanding force that nobody wants to mess with America. That's his plan. He doesn't want America to get entangled in foreign wars. He wants foreign adversaries to know that you better back off, because America has the overwhelming force to inflict terrible damage on you.
I'm going to sort of just to sort of conclude. I'm going to put to you, I guess, the three main foreign policy areas that the US will have to deal with over the coming months, and then ask you to sort of analyse those in the positions, how it might affect those areas. So we'll start with Russia, Ukraine, shall we? You've mentioned a bit about Marco Rubio. I wonder how Pete Hegseth and also the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz might try and influence Donald Trump over the situation in Ukraine and Russia, because I think that it's fair to say they come at it from sort of slightly different viewpoints, at least if you went with their viewpoints rather than Trump's.
The one thing they have in common is that they're all skeptical about this war continuing and would like to see it brought to a conclusion much sooner rather than later. Well, Trump has obviously talked of on day one. So, of course, people with a little bit more in-depth knowledge of the scene know that could be devastating for Ukraine, as it's on the back foot at the moment, and also that Russia may not want to go along with that. So, of course, they will be talking to Trump about how to best fulfill his wishes. And this is the whole game now. It's like, how do we best fulfill the president's wishes? The game in the first term was, the president's wishes are crazy. We've got to find a way of burying them or turning them into something that we think we can deliver. That was the first term. Now the second term is, how can we best fulfill what Trump wants to do? Rubio is again, he's skeptical on Ukraine. He was initially a big supporter of Ukraine, but then he's, in the last year or so, he's clearly come out for a swift end to the war. He voted against the latest big 95 billion aid package that was for Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel, because he was part of the group that said it would be better spent domestically in America. And that's what Trump believes, that this money that's been spent on arming Ukraine should now be stopped because it's better spent in America.
And we've obviously got Mike Waltz as well in there, this retired Green Beret, and Elise Stefanik, who's been nominated as the ambassador to the United Nations, called for the defunding of the relief agency for Palestinian refugees, accused the UN of anti-Semitism in its approach to sort of Gaza and Israel. I'm wondering how the Middle East might be affected by the appointments.
So again, Trump was very proud of his first-term achievement, known as the Abraham Accords, which saw Saudi Arabia recognize Israel for the first time in an agreement to try and start building a Middle East peace. And he will want to get back into that, but the only way he can is to help bring the conflict with Gaza and in Lebanon to an end. This is a tricky act to pull off, because Trump is four square behind Israel. He's been speaking regularly with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and it's, as I say, his team has got a very tough act to pull off, which is what Trump's wishes are for peace in the Middle East. Well, I guess that's in a way everybody's wish. So, hold on, I've got my phone's beeping away. Hold on 1 second, sorry. So Trump's wishes are for peace in the Middle East, but I guess that's everyone's wish, right, for peace in the Middle East. But they come at it from a very hawkish pro-Israel stance. Obviously, his daughter's converted to Judaism, and he's in any case committed to the Israeli cause. But everyone on his team is, as you've outlined, led by Elise Stefanik, who is his nomination to be the UN ambassador, extremely pro-Israel, and made her name by laying into those university chiefs who were not seen as standing by their Jewish students during the protests on campuses.
In a way, then, are we looking at this Trump presidency where a lot of people think that there's plenty of unpredictability about him, but saying the one area of certainty, the one nation that probably knows that it's not in a good position right now is Iran. Would you say that's fair?
The one nation that knows it's not in a good position.
Yes, with Trump and with those that are coming in, given the situation with Israel at the moment.
Right. Well, obviously, China is going to get hit with massive tariffs, and that's going to be a big deal with reverberations around the globe. But that's not a military problem for China, whereas Iran potentially faces military retribution from a Trump administration. Let's not forget that several Iranians were recently charged with a plot to assassinate Trump. That, if American history is anything to go by, does suggest that there could be some form of retribution, and that might not simply be sanctions. We'll have to see, because on the other hand, of course, Trump does not want to start a big old foreign war, especially one that wrecks his chances of bringing peace to the Middle East. So Trump prides himself on being able to do deals, though he pulled America out of the Iran nuclear deal that was negotiated with the other Western powers. But he's always said he's open to a new deal, and the signs are that Iran is open to talk, because it also fears a military response from Trump to this plot, and also to the destabilization that it's caused throughout the Middle East. So again, I don't know how this one's going to play out. I don't know if it's going to be, we're going to see some military action in an attack on Iran from Trump. I think he would rather talk. He would rather find a way of talking with them and trying to make a deal.
Just finally, David, one topic that does pop up on the World in 10 every few weeks is this future potential conflict involving Taiwan. Do we have any understanding of Trump's thoughts on Taiwan, and with regards to this team that have come in? Are the people of Taiwan, are the leaders in Taiwan who it's thought favor independence from China, or at least distancing themselves as much as possible? Will they feel a little safer in their beds with Trump and this team?
Well, that's a good question, because clearly Trump does not want America to be caught up in any potential conflict there. But I've also been told by one advisor that this threat of the 60% tariffs on China, well, that might be somewhat negotiable if China is prepared to give some reassurances about Taiwan. Maybe the tariffs won't be so steep. Maybe they would be modified in some way if China appears to be, as I say, giving some sort of clear indication that its ambitions with Taiwan are relaxed. So again, we're going to have to see how that goes. Rather intriguingly, President Biden is going to be meeting President Xi of China at the weekend on the margins of an international summit in South America. So that's an interesting development, given that obviously Biden's in his lame duck period now, and there's not an awful lot he can influence. We know obviously that Biden and Trump spoke for 2 hours when they met in the White House. It's not Biden's job to deliver any sort of message from Trump or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that, but it's just an intriguing development that China is obviously very keen to talk to America to try and head off an economic trade war, basically, or a development of the economic trade war, because Biden never relieved certain tariffs that Trump put on, like Chinese steel, for example, in the first term. Yeah, Trump is always open to talks. He's always open to the potential for a deal, and if he, in his own mind, he thinks he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for the Abraham Accords that started a potential broad Middle East peace plan. And if he can get some sort of guarantee from China that about Taiwan's security that doesn't cost America too much, and certainly doesn't cost American consumers, then he will try and push for that, no question. Whether that's something that China's open to is of course another issue, because clearly President Xi's been pretty clear about his ambitions for Taiwan to be much closer to the mainland.